If you have a true dream and the getting there is joyful, you will get there. If you don't get there and you veer off, it wasn't strong enough. You did not want it.
Welcome to another episode of the Canadian Dream Podcast. I'm here today with a very special guest. She is a good friend of mine. I was going to say an old friend of mine, but she's still quite young. We have so much to learn from her, and you will get inspired by her stories. With you guys, Ava Stone.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here.
Be here.
So Ava, you don't want to tell me how old you are now.
Well, it's obvious. Just look.
But tell me, how old were you when you came to Canada?
13 years old.
And when was that?
Yeah, you sneaky thing. 1956.
And
I left the country. 57, I came to Canada.
So where were you born and why did you guys come to Canada?
I was born in Budapest. There was an uprising against the Russians. We were a communist country, totally run by Russia. And we tried, well, not I just spoke to the Russian soldiers, trying to speak to them. That was the language I was learning at the time. And it failed terribly. And people just got the idea to leave the country because we knew it's not going to get any better.
What memories do you have from those first 13 years in your life in Hungary?
I was a jolly little girl, and I had two older sisters, so they were always ahead of me in school and work. And I know my parents went to work, both of them, and I was left to my devices at home after school. I was just unaware of possibilities or how this country was or anything about it. It was just a survival and going to school. So I didn't have a lot of outlook, but apparently when another couple spoke to my parents and they said, why don't we just escape? Why don't we just leave the country? I was the most verbal and crying to go. We took the train to Austria. And the interesting thing was, again, is that we stayed at the child's overnight room for children, because by next morning the other waiting room was emptied out and rushed back to Budapest by soldiers. So when we got to the border, my mother's niece and her boyfriend, well, the boyfriend was in a border patrol riding on a horse, and he said, we'll walk you through. And luckily he walked us to the border where there were two Hungarian patrol, and we gave them all we had, and then we stumbled across and down some barbed wire. It's clear as if it happened. And then we started walking on the roadside in Austria, and then people picked us up. That was just so amazing.
How many were you?
Well, there were, I think, this other couple and us.
So you had an older sister.
The oldest one stayed, and the middle one, the next to me, higher up, came. So two of us, girls came, and my parents and another couple with their child, something like that.
And you mentioned that this other family, they suggested that you guys escaped. What were you actually escaping from? What was life like in Hungary?
Well, it was a working man's life. By the end of the week, you ran out. You had to make things do. There was no extras. There was nothing special. There was no out of ordinary. There were, it was just barely making it, a kind of poor life. This was, later after the war, it hasn't built itself up. Because, during the war, first the Germans trooped through, took everything, then to go to Russia. And then the Russians come through it to chase the Germans. So then the Russians settled. It was a very great turmoil and no food. It was very difficult.
And when your parents and this other family decided to leave, did they have Canada in mind as their final destination?
No, nothing in mind. I think all those people were empty-headed.
Were they refugees back then?
I don't know how that was conceived. We just went. But then the Austrians had enough of these, Hungarians, bloody Hungarians all over the place, just rushing over there. So they communicated to other countries, and we were shipped off to England. We found some housing there, and a lady came from Canada and made a speech and say who would like to go to Canada. So it was actually an invitation by Canada to take. So the four of us said yes. And I think they put us on some rickety old plane to come to Canada, but that's all right.
So where did you land?
We landed in Winnipeg. We stayed overnight. Winnipeg.
And you didn't want to stay in Winnipeg?
What is there to say in Winnipeg? But we took the train to Vancouver, and then they gave us housing, room and board somewhere on Glendale Street in Burnaby, I remember, and in a basement suite. And then later we found another basement suite and on Yukon and Cambie there. And then my parents, they all started getting jobs.
And what did Vancouver look like back then? This was what, 65 years ago?
Yeah, in 57. If you know the electric building, that was the tallest building downtown. There were no high rises. That was the biggest building. That's on Burrard. It's that blue building.
Okay. From your early memories, what did it feel like when you finally arrived in Canada and then when you settled in Vancouver? Did anything change in you?
I never felt this foreigner feeling. I was just here and things were happening. I went to school for 6 months to learn English. I was just a happy child, made some other little Hungarian friends. But it was exciting because now I was learning the language. I started reading comics because that's the only thing I could read, and move on to Agatha Christie books because that was essential, that you learn the language as soon as possible because you want to enjoy this country, you want to understand this country. And I can't imagine living somewhere without the language. But it was exciting, and the houses were so colorful, and the cars were so big. And, it was beautiful. And we would walk downtown, and we would walk all over the place, and we really enjoyed Stanley Park. From where we lived, we walked everywhere, and it was just an amazing place to us.
Not only for you, but maybe also for your parents. Do you remember being treated any differently, or was it already common back then to have immigrants coming in? Did anybody look at you or treat you differently because you were immigrants?
That's very interesting because I don't recall any of that. And I remember trying to speak the language and people laughing, the kids laughing at me, but it didn't bother me. I didn't get it. I suppose up till now I'm still speaking and I like to talk, and I just talk and I didn't care if I didn't say it right. It didn't bother me. No, I never felt, oh, you're an immigrant. Maybe they made fun, but I didn't get it. It was above my head. I thought it was wonderful.
And what did your parents do to make the ends meet at the very beginning? What sorts of jobs?
My father got a job with this Hungarian lady. I think she had a shop, and he would work around her house and gardening. And then my sister and my mother got jobs dishwashing all over the place. So they were working, and I was going to the school for a little while.
Were you always with your sister? How far apart are you?
4 years. That was interesting because they automatically put me into a high school. And I sat in the high school and I wrote everything down I saw on a blackboard. And finally, about a week later, this teacher came up to me and said, "You don't understand a word what I'm saying, do you?" And I said, "No." Then they realized I'm in the wrong place. Then they put me into a proper 6 months just to learn English. Because you sit there like a little dummy. You just go, you don't know anything. But I think that was it for schooling.
There was a time when you guys moved out of Vancouver, or was it only part of your family who moved out of Vancouver?
This story I like because I like to think that I am the only person whose family ran away from home. Because my father and mother, for whatever reason, they thought they'd leave Vancouver and go find jobs somewhere else. And I never ever lived with them again. And they left me with my sister, the older sister, who was working at the Canadian Linen Company on Richard Street and Nelson. And she's got me a job in there. So I, as a little, I think might have been 15 by then, I was working in the linen company.
And how old were you guys?
Well, she was, as I said, she was 19, maybe I was 14 by then. The manager, he says, Ava, you don't have a social and you don't have any, papers. Like, how come you're working? But then what happened is I had this young man that was a friend of my father's who kind of took me on, and he said, we're leaving Vancouver. He had another friend, and I said to my sister, you want to come along? And the four of us got in a car and went to Ontario.
Oh, wow. How long were you in Ontario for, and what did you do there?
I got married there at 16 to the young man, and she got married to that other, gentleman in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Let's go back there. So your parents left you by yourselves in Vancouver and moved to Kelowna.
No, they moved to 100 Mile House or some
Okay,
place like
they moved somewhere. They ran away,
gone.
left you and your older sister. You were a teenager, and then these two guys approached you ladies and took you both to Ontario, and they married.
No, he was a friend of my father's.
Okay.
He was a friend of my
And
father.
married
He
him.
started dating me already, yes.
You were 16.
When I got married, yes.
How old was Bill?
He was 23.
Okay, fairly young.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
I think, well, we were married 16 years, and I think I drove him to drink, and then I left him. I think I had enough by that time.
Okay. By then, 16 years married, what was the main obstacle that you think you faced during those first 20 years as an immigrant?
Being married, and married to this Hungarian thing, I was not allowed to work. Now, I know that sounds crazy. So I had the baby at 17, and I was a stay-at-home mom is what I did for the next foreseeable future with him until I left him. Then I went to work. So I enjoyed myself. Sadly, marrying too young, and these Hungarian types, I don't tell anybody.
Let's go back a little bit. I want to know, as a teenager, when you were 15, 16, 14, what dreams did you have? What did you aspire to see, to meet, and to know, and to become?
I don't think I had enough brains for that, to tell you the truth. Seriously, I had none. I know we talked about having heard advertisement, you would have liked to have a car. Now, this boyfriend, he had a fancy car. I think that's what the marriage was, based upon, that car. I liked it.
And you were, what, 15, 16?
No, by 16, I married at 16. And I never worked while married to him, which was, a shame. I should have learned something that way. But I took a lot of courses and I read a lot. So I started, that's why I left, you become a little smarter. But I enjoyed myself. And whatever the situation was, nice cars and this and that, the situation, I enjoyed Canada. I enjoyed the language. I enjoyed having friends like Canadians, not necessarily all Hungarians. And I never joined a Hungarian group to be only as my source of entertainment or my source of communication, but, had friends in many places. I think I just enjoyed, and as a married person with a child, just being.
And how important do you think it was for you to actually have these Canadian friends?
It was important to me to learn the language and to read and watch TV, and through TV learn what's going on and be aware of. I remember, listening to the news and different little things about the country. And because even in Hungary we had good education by that time, I had quite a bit of knowledge about Canada and how big it was, how amazing it was, and living in Vancouver, I mean, it was just a wonderful place to be.
Could you compare life back in Europe and here in Canada? Were you actually better off here?
All the way better. I mean, as it went with the years and my second husband and our house and our life, I mean, I can't imagine having that quality life with these quality things in Hungary now. Like,
what do you mean by quality?
We were both working persons. I worked at the Credit Bureau Vancouver for 17 years, and we owned a house, and we had nice cars, and we had a nice life, and good friends from all over the place. We had art, and we had good things, and yet we weren't extravagant, crazy, but we appreciated the essence of Canada to me, that I would look in my home and say, look what you can have here. Just ordinary people without too much effort. If you just, you have seen my house. It had an essence to it of enjoyment or appreciation. So, and I always thought I couldn't have done this ever in anywhere else, or definitely not in Hungary, no.
Okay, so now it's been, 70, almost 65 years since you came. How much has Canada changed?
Perhaps it hasn't changed as much in a sense, but I have become more aware of it and its workings and the politics and the local politics, and it seemed to me it had become more difficult, especially lately. It's more difficult for the poor. It's difficult for the sick. I don't recall all these horrendous problems for the city, for the country, when it seems so rich. I never understood it. This country is so rich, and you can work here, and there's no problem finding a job, and then it becomes so. It's disintegrated somewhat. It's not so solid anymore, like housing and the homeless and the doctors and, so the news is really quite frightening. Now I don't pay that much attention to the news anymore because there's nothing I can do about it.
And do you think it's something that has changed in Canada or in the world?
Oh, in the world, absolutely. Because when we came here, that's how it was in the 50s. People just seemed to be able to buy houses and have a little home and do this and do that. That sort of changed. And yet there's lots of money here and lots of rich people with money. It's the balance is somehow shifted.
Many people actually come to Canada because they have more opportunities to make money. How important has money been in your life?
I mean, I never married a go-getter type like you. Being happy with what I had and enjoying what I had, I didn't have the feel of lacking. I always had a feel of abundance in my life, and I always had everything that I needed. So I was always felt that fortunate here, that without much effort, I could have all this and enjoy all this and be safe. How many times you'll say, oh, this is a good country, or we have nice water here, or we have this here. If you look around, it has so many beautiful places and benefits.
Let's talk now a little bit about the present. How is your life today?
Tremendous. This is what I call chapter 3 on my own. And that son I mentioned, he passed away a long time ago, brain cancer, so he's been gone a long time. And because of the way I conducted my affairs and the way I grew and changed, because the opportunities were there in this country in a sense of courses, all the books you wanted, all the information, I have created for myself the perfect life. So now I'm extremely content.
So what do you do on a daily basis?
Well, I teach yoga part-time, of course. And I'll be doing gardening. I'm just setting up my new home that I moved to after selling my house. And taking care of, life, business, friends, visiting, the usual things, going out, shopping. It's just perfect.
So tell me about your yoga classes, because I have been to a few of them, and you have a very loyal community of people who come not only for the yoga, but also for the wisdom that comes during your classes.
This is all a surprise to me. And daily I say to myself, I don't believe this all happened. How did it happen? I watched television way back, and I saw a person on it doing yoga, and I started doing it. Then I decided I'm going to be a yoga teacher. At the credit bureau, the boss gave me a nice office room and fixed it up for me to teach there. Staff, free. And then when we got laid off due to the selling of the credit bureau, I looked for a job teaching yoga. And of course, I never took lessons, but I did get a job at the Port Moody Community Centre for 1 hour, which I worked into 7 hours at one point. And that blossomed through the years. I think January the 6th had been 24 years I've been there. So some of the originals are still showing up. So I developed some kind of pattern, some kind of awareness as I studied and learned and read and practiced awareness, spiritual awareness. They must like it because they keep coming back and they have to pay for it, right? And this had become such a big part of my life, that such a joy, because now we have what you call, my boss jokingly calls it because as a cult, because when I would want to have a substitute, if I'm not there, nobody goes anywhere. He says, you have a cult, you don't need a substitute. So we have a close-knit, loving, sharing. And I tell you something about that class. Every nationality is in there. And with my class, we're all the same. We enjoy the same thing. So you can see how certain things draw us together. And that really, I think that really helps when you have all these nationalities come in there and with the same thought, with the same joy, with the same desire to be happy. Because that's the main point.
What about the needs? What are the similar needs that they have and that you try to fulfill with your messages?
There is needs and then there is wants. And it's an attitude about what you want or need. And if you think you don't have something and you want something, then it's already set in your mind that you're lacking that item and you don't have it. So it's more desirable. But it gives you a kind of negative feeling, wanting. So the idea is that you already have it and it will show up. Like, be grateful what you have. Because people, no matter what they get, a few days later, a few months later, they want something else. Because in the human mind, getting something is the answer to whatever need they think they have. But it's not the material world. The material world will never satisfy you. It's being fulfilled, then you can enjoy the material world. So I think we understand that in these yoga classes, that you have to allow yourself the joy of being. And this being will appreciate what already is, and due to that, whatever else you need will happen.
Do you find that people nowadays are lonely?
I think so. I think people can be lonely.
And what should an immigrant, for example, do if they come many times by themselves or just one small family? What would you suggest them to try and to mitigate this problem?
Well, at first I would say, if they have the language difficulty, is find their old countrymen, they all have groups, they all have support groups. Because if you don't have the language, then it's difficult. But and through your own group, you can then, go make friends with the neighbor, talk to somebody at the store, get a job and speak there. As long as you have a little bit of language, you would get along. I think it's up to the individual. Why do they come here? Are they here to make more money? But they want to stick together and hold on to their old customs and their old ways of life? Or do they come here to experience this country in its fullness with their people or Canadians or other kinds, So it depends, I think, the reason why people come here. A lot of it, I think, has to do with just because you can make money here more than anywhere else. And it's a safe, good country to be in.
And many people come and they actually find it very difficult to let go of their past. They came because they want something new, but at the same time, it's hard to start over. So they find themselves still attached for a long time and very closely attached to their families and values, and to even involved in politics, what's happening with their president and their prime minister. And
Yeah.
and I meet some of them and I go, oh, it doesn't really matter anymore. You're here now. What do you think about that?
If you hold on to this old country thing, you're limiting yourself, because here you can't fully enjoy that space, that city, that anything that you're used to. So if you're not open to expand and look at life and look at different ways here, well, then maybe you're just the same person with a little more money. It's no difference to you. But that's not the purpose of life, is it? Purpose of life is to experience it in many ways, on many levels, in many types of people, many different things, and see what more things you can enjoy. Because if you stick to your own way, then you have your New Year's together, you're totally, you're wasting life, because now you have more opportunities, and if you don't use them, that's your loss. I can't see how that. Why would you?
Just let's dive deeper here. In general, how important is the past in our lives?
Oh, that's a good one.
Or the present or the future?
Forget about it. I don't care. Forget the past. And don't tell me, people say, yeah, but you have to remember that, the stove is hot. You have to remember in the past. You're going to burn your hand if you put on a stove now. You don't have to remember that from before. I have no interest in the past, because all the thoughts, the belief systems, they limit you, because your expectations are following what happened before. So this went wrong. Now you'll never do that again, because it might go wrong. Or if somebody hurt your feelings, well, you won't be being like that, because it might hurt your feeling. When people say to me, you hurt my feelings, I said, is it the liver? Is it the kidney? Could you tell me where it's hurting your feelings? Where is you're storing all this hurting? Like, what is this, all these feelings hurting? So, the past holds you back, because if you live in the past today, tomorrow is going to be another day like yesterday, and you don't grow, you don't change, you don't experience, get very dull, very slow. Your mind just stays the same. It doesn't move. And don't even talk to me about the future. There is no future. You have this idea that it's going to be happening, this will happen in my future, but it's not happening now. It's a thought. That future, maybe it will become now. Then you can enjoy it. Then you can do it. You can plan on it. You can save some money for a holiday, or you can plan things for the future. But one thing I warn people about, now you have a goal in the future, and it may be a long-term goal, short-term goal, and your whole focus is on this future item happening. Now, meanwhile, while you're focusing on it, you're trudging towards it. You do what it needs to be done, but your whole joy is waiting at the end of the line. And then from this time to that time, you're wasting your time. You're supposed to enjoy the now always as it takes you. Now, when you're in the now and you're enjoying yourself, you're more efficient, you get things done faster, they get things done better because you're focusing and you're enjoying it. So you cannot give up the moment's joy for any ideas about the future. Because what happens if don't chug along there? It's like when I'm gardening. I just want to see it all done, beautiful, and I can't wait to see it. And I'm trudging along, working hard. And then when it's there, I don't know how to enjoy it because I wasn't happy before. Why would I be happy all of a sudden? You don't. You have to have the joy and take it with you and create what you do and then move on to something else. So don't people expect things somehow the future will fix. But, all you have is this. I tell them, I show that yoga sometimes. You want to see time. Now, time doesn't exist. There is no time. Where is it? Who has it? Where did they put it? I forgot it? I don't know. It's somewhere there. But to stop time, because it's on the clock, it says there is time. To stop time, you just take your hand. Now, when nothing moves, there's no time when nothing moves. Only movement indicates time. When it's completely still, there is no time. So you take your hand and you watch time. So you put your hand from here to here and you move it like that. Now you can see time being spent, time being used. But it's now, and it's in your hands. And you feel time, and you feel your stillness. And you're awake, and you're being, and you're whole and complete. And it's perfect. So when you do this, you come into this moment, and that past falls away. The future is no consequence. You enjoy it because there's nothing opposing you. It's a perfect moment in time. And this is what you do from time to time. You let everything pass away so you know what time is. And this is the only time. So why not enjoy this? You can't enjoy it later. Just now.
Ava?
Yes.
Many times people, not only immigrants, but in general, they have dreams and then two things happen. They either don't know what to do about it or they start heading in that direction and then life happens and they give up. Why do you think this second happens? Why do people give up on their dreams? And what would you tell them to do?
If you have a true dream and the getting there is joyful, you will get there. If you don't get there and you veer off, it wasn't strong enough. You did not want it. It's those people who say, I want it. I knew this Hungarian way back in the, because he wanted something so much. All he ever ate was eggs or something, and his teeth fell out or something, but he wanted to save the money. It's just something, never mind. Anyway, it's funny. But what I'm saying, if I want that, then I should enjoy getting it. And that's why I don't give it up, because I'm enjoying while I'm getting it. Then you don't give it up. But if you're just wishy-washy and easily waylay and veer off some other dream and or just get tired or something, then you didn't want it bad enough, so you don't get it. So too bad, so sad.
So having a dream does not mean you really want it.
Yes, you have to want it. You want your dreams, and you get them done.
Yeah.
You do everything.
Yeah, and this is another dream for me.
And you enjoy it, and you have a beautiful family, and everything is falling into your lap, because you do all the things necessary to do it, but you enjoy yourself. You enjoy the energy. You enjoy the creativity. You enjoy the people. I know how you enjoy doing the documentary. You were absolutely amazing, putting up with us old farts, that tottering around, trying to corral us together in a little. That was so funny. Poor guy. Anyway. So that's what people, but people don't have it. Okay, sit around, have your beer, watch TV. Who cares? Who cares? You're going to get boring and dull, and you and your fat wife look at each other and think, oh, hey Mabel, this isn't working for me. Well, whatever. Like you're making a choice every moment of your life. Every moment you make a choice. So what do you make when you get up? I'm going to have a damn good day, or oh, well, I better get, work just enough to get my paycheck. Yeah, what is in your mind?
It breaks my heart when I see people who made it all the way to Canada, which is considered the land of opportunities.
Yeah.
That's actually what it was for me. And it was this for at least two people who are here behind the cameras. But sometimes people make it all the way here and they still lack the discipline? Or is it also something a little bit more difficult to tackle, such as the lack of confidence, the lack of, I would say, self-belief? How can somebody improve their self-image, Ava? Let's say they want something, they really want it, but they just don't believe they can do it.
I see what you mean about lack of self-belief, or if you have, you're not sure about yourself and you have some fear because the ego you're always fearing something. You usually fear of failure even before you start something, so that never gets you off the road. But if you are really interested, then you find a way. Like I found a way of reading all those books, all those years of doing all those courses. I went to England one time, 6 months I lived in England to learn certain things that just gave me a boost, and I came back and that was different. So then you have to realize, I mean, look at you, I'm either lazy or I'm stupid or I'm slow or I don't have enough information. What do I need? Talk to somebody who can help you, watch a course. I mean, there's 1,000 these money-made men, on YouTube. Oh, I did this, and just do. Well, have a look what they think about, and I don't know where does one really get it, but when you need something and you want something, you will get all the parts for it. It's like you want to build something, you can't leave the windows out or the doors out. You have to have all the parts. You have to have you in fullness. Then you have to learn yourself. Who am I? What am I? What am I good for? What is my good side? Am I patient? Am I hardworking? Am I a good listener? Do I learn? I want to know more. Like, pick something. Like, start expanding yourself out of who you are.
Find out what they're really good at, what they really want, and get better at it until they achieve those goals?
To me, I think to find out what you really like to do. I mean, I love yoga. At some point after I was there 15 years, they said, you have to pass a course, you have to do this and that. You have to be not registered, but something else. Anyway, and then finally the big boss comes to me and says, we're grandfathering you. And I said, you better, because I'm not going to pay $3,000 for a yoga course and go on weekend retreats, because I'm not going to do what they do anyway, because that's boring. So you better. They could. I'm the only person, that is not sort of registered as a legal yoga instructor, but I get the most people. So, sometimes they say, if you love what you do, that's not a job.
Yeah.
That's not hard work. That's a pleasure. Find something you really like to do. You might get a job to support yourself, but start doing something that draws you and help somewhere, or do something, and then take a course on that. Because then you're going to enjoy your life. Trudging off to work every day, for most people, is the most depressing thing they can think of. And they don't produce well, they're not happy, they're a burden on society, they're useless.
Right.
To the families. No, you have to find that you enjoy. And you might change your mind later. You could move on and find something else. That's okay, but feel that there is possibilities for you. You're not locked into anything.
Do you think Canada is still the land of opportunities?
Every country is a land, I think, if you're clever, even in those funny places, because there's always those weirdos that can make it anywhere. They're smart and they're just create. But of course, Canada is, because we're a safe country. No wars, we have good water, we have good super governments. Come on, I mean, it's still just the best of country. I mean, I can't imagine living anywhere.
This might sound redundant because we were just talking about it, but if you could pick one piece of advice only to give to any newcomer, anybody who's dreaming of coming to Canada and pursuing their next dreams in Canada, what would it be?
Well, the main one, whether they have the language or not, get very proficient in the language. Get a sense of themselves, so that when they're in a job interview or with people, anything like that, you have a presence. So there's an essence of you, an energy about you that people sense, and a good sense of humor about you, that if you lose one, that's not the end of the world. You understand the workings of things. So, but the language is the most important, and speak properly, and behave, and well-mannered, polite, good listener. Give this person that people want to be with. Have an idea what that person would be like. The one you might like to spend time with. Oh, I like this person. It picks me up. It's funny. It's quiet. It's nice.
Yeah.
Be that person. Just shift.
I love it.
And just be brazen and be yourself, and let everything fall where they may. The lousy people will fall aside. It's a good thing. And the people who are like you, they'll stick around because they're happy, because you're connected.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Ava.
You're welcome. As I said, anytime. Just, give me another topic and I'm relentless.
All right, I hope you liked this episode of the Canadian Dream podcast. If you did, please like it and share it with someone else who could also get some value from it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. It's very important for us to grow the channel, especially now at the beginning, okay? Also, if you want to know more about Ava Stone, I recommend that you go right now on YouTube and find The Fifth Generation, our award-winning documentary, where you can see how awesome this woman is and how fast she drives as well.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much, and I see you next time.